So, so now going to our next session. First of all, special thanks to my mentor, Dr. Bansi Sabar, Dr. Rakesh Parikh sir, and Dr. Amit Gupta sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity in DTech on virtual conference on diabetes technology. So we have Dr. Pratik sir. Hello, sir. So for that, I warmly welcome to our eminent chairperson, Dr. Mandesh Tivaskar sir, and Dr. Ritu Chori ma'am. Introduction, please. CV. Yes. So there is no need to introduce Dr. Mandesh sir. Sir did MD, FRCP, London, Ireland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, FSCP, FICP, and FGSI.
Let it be. That is okay. That's perfectly fine. Okay. So
So
no need for a detailed explanation.
without
Thank you
wasting
very
much
much.
time.
Yes. Thank you very much. And let me honestly confess that this was absolutely jaw-dropping session. Digitosomians, amazing concept. I was really truly thrilled. And as Purvi has rightly pointed out, Shashank was not just a cherry; he was a cherry blossom on top. In fact, I would say. And as usual, innovations in a right kind of directions, as when we rightly pointed out, can be the savior. So the weapon, a tool that you can have, which can either change the whole perspective, the way you look at the management. Now we move on to the next session, that is mixed bag. And I do have honor along with me, Dr. Ritu Jori, to co-chair this session. And the first session is by none other than Dr. Pratik Chaudhary, sir, and he would be talking about precision diabetes. Now, we heard how really technology can be effectively used. Now, Dr. Pratik is going to guide us about the precision diabetes, where we stand today. So, a quick brief of Dr. Pratik is being just a young, budding and very, very dynamic endocrinologist from the London's King's College. He's being the professor of diabetes at the University of Leicester. He's a great researcher, and his a work package which led to HypoResolve Consortium within the PI of large multinationals, publications which happened on the biological and the psychosocial impacts of sensor detected hypoglycemia. So there again, the technology is cropping up. And he's also a chair of diabetes technology workshop and the network in UK. He's a medical advisor to the Department of Transport. And also he is an associate editor of diabetes medicine and a member of a ESD postgraduate training program. Over to you, Dr. Pratik, and I would be very eager to hear from you on precision diabetes, where we stand today.
Thanks, Dr. Tivaskar. And I must admit, after that last session, I feel those people were way more qualified speakers to speak about this topic than I actually. But there we go. I hope we've got the right slide set there, or is this one?
Yeah, perfectly. You're perfectly visible and audible. Maybe probably that you may stop your sharing in the sense that I would say the next slide mode, or what, I don't know what it's called. It's presenter profile.
Oh, is it in the wrong view? Oh, there's always when I have two screens.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes. No, this is perfect.
It's always confusing the computer which one it chooses to. A technology conference, running the technology is always a challenge. So thank you for that introduction. And actually, I was mind blown by the last session as well. So that was so exciting. This maybe a bit more balanced, a bit more basic. So, precision medicine, I suppose you've had the word there. It's medical care designed to optimize the efficiency for a particular group of patients, or even for a particular patient, by using different profiling, and that could be technological, genetical, or modular. And I think the enabler for this, so this was something, there have been four major industrial revolutions. The first one was the steam revolution. The second became the electrical revolution about 120 years ago. 50 years ago, we had the electronic revolution. And we're just about on the cusp, 2000 last 10 years, is the artificial intelligence revolution. And that's what's really driving a lot of this push towards precision medicine. And really, the next 20, 30 years of medicine and things in the world will rely so much on this kind of artificial intelligence. And what's enabling this to come together is the confluence of different things. Because now, increasingly, certainly in the Western world now, we are moving away from paper records to electronic health records. So a lot of the data is captured in a digital way that you can analyze and use. We have connected glucose and insulin data and other sensors as well. That could be weight, activity, blood pressure, connected devices. So It's data coming together instead of lots of data being stored on pieces of paper. And along with that, you've also got big data analytical methods. And the major place where a lot of this big data analysis started is, of course, in finance. If you think about it, a lot of the closed loop algorithms, the DIY closed loops, they were written by people who wrote the same algorithms to when to buy and sell stocks. And that's just the same as when to give insulin or give glucagon. And it's the same mindset, the same algorithm. That's what the people who did the DIY algorithms wrote. And actually, as you're analyzing big data, that software, the methodology for analyzing big data is moving so rapidly. And then finally, you've got biobanks. And by biobanks, now there are around the world many established biobanks that have got a lot of genomic data, but they also have biobanks of human data about weight and activity and when people are sleeping or when people are waking. And so we've got the resource now to start using that data and analyzing it. And the areas in which this can move, I just took this, it's huge, right? You got data on how people move in an environment, in urban planning, how much, if you plan your city, how much people will be active, what's the impact of the environment on it, what's the impact of our lifestyle with the built up with cars, with sports and activity, how much people are using those things. Again, all these things influence the outcome of, so you've got your environment, you've got your genetic aspects, you've got your hormonal aspects, as very nicely shared by the previous speaker. And we also know that one size doesn't fit all. We've been so used in this era of evidence-based medicine to say, okay, semaglutide will drop A1C by 1.5%, will give you an 8 kilo weight loss. SGLT2 will give you 0.5% A1C and 5 kilo weight loss. These are average numbers from large trials of 8,000 people. But in those trials, there were many people who did not improve and many people who improved way more than that. In closed loop trials that I'm involved in, we've got some people who improve 10% time in range, some people who improve 30% time in range. Of course, it's based on their baseline, but based on the way they interact with that drug or that technology. And there may be genetic prediction factors that govern why a drug or a therapy will work better in someone. There can be participatory, adherence, compliance issues with drugs and technologies. And all these factors govern how things improve. You can see how important this is. There was a position statement recently from the ADA and AAISD. This was 2 years ago now. And a lot of big names, Andrew Harris, Ewan Pearson, people we know who are involved, William Kefelu, involved in that program. And they launched the Precision Medicine and Diabetes Initiative by the ADA and AAISD a couple of years before that. And the program of this was a kind of a program of over 10 years. A phase one was get things ready, get stakeholder engagement, because there's no point having the science of precision medicine, but not having it incorporated in healthcare delivery systems. If the government systems or the payers, people who are buying healthcare and providing it, if they don't buy in, the stakeholders don't buy in, then having all this amazing technology and not reaching the people doesn't make sense. So identifying, getting the stakeholders involved, organizing the evidence and getting a consensus report, which you just seen. And then the next stage now that they're into is getting research programs out to address those gaps in research, to get the projects like the Twin Project there and other new techniques, get them tested in large data and large studies, and generate the research evidence to move in that direction. And then you've got dissemination and clinical guidance, and then you've got patient and physician education. So there's this roadmap for how we would bring in precision medicine, so that in the next 5 years, it'll become not just a thing that we aspire to or talk about or hear about, but something that enters into our daily practice. And I think this is where we are, understanding the disease using data already collected to understand what factors predicted, so that you can create those algorithms, create those plans about how you can move things forward. We still have to do the regulatory engagement and patient engagement and clinician education. And then you need to generate the studies that will get the regulatory approval. And then the next step is getting any technology into healthcare. You need to get regulatory approval that the system works. And then you need to show clinical benefit and clinical economic value to get it paid for by the payers. And then it starts entering into the clinical translation. So it's a way to go before we can start using some of these things widely. Now, with precision medicine, the precision medicine, you can divide it into different aspects of where it will work. You've got prevention of diabetes, you've got the appropriate diagnosis of diabetes, surprisingly still a problem. And then the biggest chunk, of course, that we've heard about is precision therapeutics, which drug will work better where. and then the monitoring of those outputs, and then the prognosis. Can you predict who's going to do well, who's going to do badly? Why? So in terms of diagnosis, I think it sounds like you've, in the previous talk, people have mentioned this before, but you've got lots of different types of diabetes. As you can see there, you've got your type 1 diabetes, a small group, and a very heterogeneous type 2 diabetes, and you've got small groups of monogenic and secondary diabetes. And you can look at different factors that cluster that tell you which diabetes someone has. And as you can see here, there's a lot of overlap between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. A recent study from a clinic in Scotland, they did a C-peptide simple test on all people who were coded as type 1 diabetes in their practice, and they found 10% people were miscoded. We're just on the verge of starting that process where I work in Leicester and near Birmingham. We've got a very high proportion of South Asians, Indian and Pakistani population, where again, we're picking up so many people who are miscoded. A 20-year-old gets diabetes, actually type 2, but because they're young, they get coded as type 1. And so I think you've seen this. You've got the autoimmune disease, this SAID version, which is what we classically call type 1 diabetes. And then you've got the severe insulin deficient, SIDD. So these are type 2s, but they become rapidly insulin deficient. SIRD, severe insulin resistant diabetes. Often that will be associated with quite a lot of central obesity. And these are the people who often need a quite high dose of insulin. We certainly come across quite a lot of people who are on 100, 150, 200 units of insulin. And I probably got a cohort of at least 100 patients in our practice who are on more than 300 units a day with severe insulin resistance. And then the vast majority of diabetes is this mild obesity-related diabetes. If you look at any of the, here is 22% in this study. That's the sort of classic diabetes. Then you got 40% with mild age-related diabetes. Often these people are diagnosed after the age of 55 or 60 and not that obese, but and they've got a combination of insulin resistance and insulin deficiency. And you can differentiate these to some extent with genetic risk markers. So if you do a genetic cut, you can find out that with some specificity, you can say that if you got a type 1 genetic risk score, we can say with some confidence that whether you have type 1 or type 2, depending on the overlap. And you can see in the younger people, generally that risk score will not help the diagnosis, because if they're under 20 and they're slim, and you know that they've got type 1. But in this middle group, age 20 to 40, they can help you differentiate type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And in your older people where your thinking of type 1 is low, 40 to 50-year-olds, there again, it can help identify that 5 or 10% of those people who are actually type 1. And when you give them tablets, they're at risk of DKA or the lung problem. It's important, of course, you're all, of course, aware of the different stages of type 1 diabetes, and with genetic risk scoring and precision medicine, maybe you can find out people who are going to get type 1 diabetes earlier on. And that not only reduces the risk of them presenting with DKA, at least 60 or 70% of people with type 1 diabetes, even in the West, present with DKA. And with screening and appropriate risk scoring, maybe you do better, closer monitoring, and you can prevent those crash landing with DKA, which obviously sets people up for a bad relationship with this condition that they have to live with. Also giving you the opportunity to intervene with therapeutic drugs that can prevent or slow down the progression of disease. In the UK just now, we've just been involved in a study where we are starting to screen the population across the board of 4-year-olds for type 1 diabetes, identifying those people who have already have the antibodies or the genetic risk factors, monitoring them over time, and then being able to intervene early. And again, as you'll have heard of teplizumab, and now there are at least 4 or 5 other molecules that we are that are being tested around the world that can intervene earlier and prevent the progression. And then we move to precision therapeutics, where we might tailor therapy to an individual depending on how they're working. If you know the risk, maybe there's precision prevention where you can give immunotherapy or give someone lifestyle or other advice early on to help prevent the disease progression. And just thinking about that heterogeneity in clinical response, this was a real-world study of a high-dose 3 milligrams of liraglutide in Canada. And you can see here, look, what struck me was the error bars of the intervention. So the weight loss, we can tell people you're going to get an average of 8 kilo weight loss, but actually some person got 2 kilo weight loss and some person got more than 14 kilo weight loss. And again, knowing that ahead of time, predicting which person is better going to respond to an SGLT2 or a GLP-1 by genetic risk score can help move things forward, get the right person, the right therapy, reduce costs in the system, improve outcomes within the system. So the framework, there's a nice framework that's been published for how you analyze it. You understand the variation in efficacy of a diabetes treatment, and you understand that can be a pharmacokinetic variation or a pharmacodynamic. So there's a genetics of drug transport and metabolism. We know, for example, that the active insulin time of rapid insulin can be 2 or 3 hours in some people, and there's a cohort about 20% of people who have a very slow excretion of insulin, and so they get delayed hypoglycemia at 4 hours quite routinely. And this is picked up in a lot of the closed loop studies where they had to modify the closed loop to those people. So there's a genetic ways in which you handle the drug pharmacokinetically, but also in genetic variation in how the drug acts, how effective that drug is within your body. And a few of the drugs that have been found out that we use a lot that have a clear genetic difference in how they work is things like metformin and SGLT2s. So this was a study where they looked at different risk factors and other core drugs and that are governed by this OCT1 gene that influence the incidence of GI side effects with metformin. And this gene also affects the GI side effects with tricyclic antidepressants, citalopram, PPIs, calcium blockers, and a range of other drugs. And you can see the range of people with GI side effects, the odds ratio, you can be 4 times higher if you got more than one risk allele. And it can be, the baseline is no drug. So what people get GI side effects of metformin is governed by this OCT1 gene. Similarly, the outcome of this SLC47A1 drug also governs the remission from diabetes with metformin or lifestyle, as happens. And this is a paper by Ewan Pearson and kind of the commonest drugs, 4 common groups of drugs that we use. And so metformin, you get a better result. Side effects in those with OCT1 transport, as I just said, but also outcomes are different in people with different alleles of the GLUT2 genotype. There's a couple of genes, the CYPC8 and the SCLCOB1B1 activity that can affect how well you respond to rosiglitazone. And that probably explains those few patients on TZDs who had massive improvement. Again, of course, there's the CYP gene is well known for governing who have a strong response to sulfonylureas and a weak response. It can be responsible for about 0.5% difference in A1C. And for DPP4s, again, you've got a CTRB1 gene, which can affect a 0.5% difference in DPP4s. So knowing these differences can maybe guide which drug you might use in a different person in the future. So with systems and precision medicine, the big enabler, of course, is big data, because you need millions of data points to be able to identify these differences in outcomes with different people. And so you've got the epigenetics, and then again, with big data, the other thing is how precision medicine can help give you personalized decision support, because it's not just the genetics and the metabolism, if you like, but it's also how the human interface works with that person. And that might also be an area of precision medicine that people look at. The area of diabetes that I'm most involved with is technology. And again, here we can say, how do you personalize the technology that you give to someone? How do you know whether a pump is better for someone or a CGM or a closed loop? And how do you tune those devices to the way that individual works? The way a person interacts with the technology depends on their lifestyle, depends on their psychology, depends on their social and cultural background. And again, the way we're learning about this is we're now with connected devices, data going through a mobile phone to the cloud. Connected pens, insulin pumps, CGM devices that send data to the cloud. At the moment, we're doing a very basic work with them. We're just looking at the data and helping them in clinic. But the real value of these systems is that they're collecting data on different parameters. They're putting them, the phone is just the enabler that sends into the cloud for us to look at them. But the main difference, the main value will be when that data will come back down to the individual as an individualized decision support, moment by moment. If someone with type 1 diabetes takes 4 or 5 boluses a day, using the same fixed carb ratio sensitivity every single day doesn't make any sense to me, because every moment in time, depending on how stressed you are, how much food you've had, how much sleep you've had, how much activity you've done, your insulin sensitivity varies. And an advanced and a closed loop does that for basal. But actually, that information, that system can be available for people on injections as well, which are the vast majority of people. And I think you can leverage the data from closed loops to help the millions of people who are going to be using injections, because for a much lower cost. And then, of course, you want to be able to get precision prognostics, understanding which person with their background, with their genetic background, with their clinical environment characteristics, and what their risk of different disease conditions is. providing some of that information might help them change their behavior, move to different drugs, and see and get them better outcomes. As you look here, the cumulative incidence of prognosis to the diabetic kidney complications is very different depending on what type of diabetes you have. And again, knowing that might make you more aggressive for this group of patients compared to this group of patients. Finally, one of the ways in which we're trying to address this, we've just been going for a European grant. And what we're trying to do is we know what the data is from the real randomized controlled trials, and we have a huge body of evidence in big real-world databases. And we're working with the Swedish, the Danish, the British, and the German database, pulling them all together. And then we can find, if you give a drug, let's say this is semaglutide RCT showing a certain outcome, we can find people who have a similar criteria and see how they perform in the real world. We can then also look at how that drug performs in the entire cohort who was exposed to that drug, and then conduct virtual trials in those real data spaces to identify the different factors that govern the outcomes. And that will help us get a more precision medicine-based approach. But along with the science, we also have to work with the regulators and the payers to make them agree, make them believe that this sort of approach will be valuable, will give them value for money, will get better outcomes for their population. And so finally, at the moment, precision medicine is helping us make better diagnosis. That's where we are today with C-peptides and antibodies. But application to wider diabetes therapeutics and prognosis is currently aspirational, and it relies on a lot of data coming through. And I think big data, real-world data, and linking with genetic biobanks. So these data linkages is where the world is at the moment, and that's going to be really important in converting the aspirational into the pragmatic. And then finally, we need interactions between the academics, between the industry and the governments and payers, so that we are allowed, we can finally get those benefits to our patients. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. That was just outstanding. Now, Dr. Ritu, would you like to take the next session, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Prateek, for that lucid presentation. I think precision medicine, quite interesting for all of us. So I would like to now invite and introduce Dr. Revital Nimri for the next presentation. Honor for me indeed. Senior Pediatric Endocrinologist, ma'am is also the Director of Scientific and Technology Diabetes Services, Institute for Endocrinology and Diabetes, also is associated with National Center for Childhood Diabetes and the Snyder Children's Medical Center of Israel. She's also the co-founder and chief medical for the R&D department at OSER, DreamMed Diabetes Senior Pediatric Endocrinologist and diabetes expert who focuses solely on new as well as innovative technologies for treatment of type 1 diabetes. Without further ado, I request Dr. Revital Nimri to take us through her presentation.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and I hope that you see my slides.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay. So good afternoon. I'm honored and privileged to take part in this meeting, and I would like to thank the organizing committee and Dr. Basu for inviting me. And I'm very happy to share with you today the highlights from the automated insulin delivery consensus meeting. I'm, of course, presenting on behalf of the consensus panel. And this is my disclosure slide. I decided to start with depicts the evolution of the automated insulin delivery systems with several important milestones on the way. The foundation of automated insulin delivery approach was introduced already in the early 16 and 17, but it took several decades until technology breakthrough, mainly continuous glucose monitoring technology, advances and enabled the development of more sophisticated AIDs with a control algorithm that continuously adjusts insulin delivery in response to real-time sensor glucose levels and other inputs such as meal intake or exercise announcement. AID systems have recently become an integral part of diabetes management, and guidance is needed for utilizing this technology in clinical practice. So for that, a year ago during the 2021 Advanced Technology in Treatment for Diabetes. We could not meet in person like we're doing today, and we held a virtual consensus meeting. The recommendations were developed by a large, as you can see, group of developer, researchers, and clinicians with recognized expertise in automated insulin deliveries, as well as individuals with diabetes. And you can appreciate the long list of participants from 18 countries around the globe. And the main aim of the consensus were first to agree on the indication for use, to give recommendation how to initiate AID use, to delineate the way education and training should be given, and suggest the way for follow-up, to give clinical guidance for AID treatment based on clinical experience and studies, recommend metrics for reporting, how to report, how to present the data, and to give recommendation and identify gaps, opportunity related to psychological and behavioral issues, and finally determine the needs and future of AID systems. So the panel was divided into 9 subgroups, each assigned a topic to discuss, review the literature, and provide evidence-based recommendation. At the virtual meeting, each group convened in a virtual room, and then we all convened together. Each group presented the data. We had discussion, and we came up with a final report with the recommendation of the consensus meeting. Here are screenshots from the consensus meeting held in May 2021. So there were 9 main topics that I won't go over it, but you can see it here. We had an introduction, summary of clinical evidence, target population for AID therapy, how to initiate, how to report and present AID data. Regarding the glycemic target with AID, the panel did not recognize separate targets for AID, although many can achieve the target AID, the target time in range with the current AIDs. We currently recommend the new old time in range recommendations, however, may be subject to change as the technology evolves and should be customized according to the individual patient with diabetes. So this is the last one, and the future of AID, as we already talked about. So hopefully soon you will be able to read the full panel discussions and recommendation. I will present the main recommendation from the 4 topic outline in this slide. Now, clinical evidence supporting the efficacy and safety of automated insulin delivery system has grown over the last 6 years with the introduction of commercially available and soon to become available AID system. And now it's more important, people with diabetes have now the option to choose the AID that is most suitable for them. AID use across the board increased time in range by 9 to 16%, reduced A1C by 0.3 to 0.5%, with either no change or reduction in the time in hypoglycemia, even when comparing to predictive low glucose suspend. But probably most telling is the real-world data with thousands of users with no exclusion criteria that supported the randomized control study. This glycemic improvement was demonstrated across all age groups in all genders and regardless of diabetes duration, prior insulin delivery modality, or if it's pump or MID or baseline A1C. And this is a 6-month study showing nicely that the use of AID improved time in range for many for any baseline A1C. The greatest improvement was seen in people with the highest initial A1C. And similarly, we also showed in a study that the lower baseline time in range is associated with the greatest improvement in time in range. And this was found for the 670G and also for the advanced hybrid closed loop of the Medtronic. This was data from our GIF study. So the panel advocates that all people with diabetes should be considered for AID use, especially those with experiencing suboptimal glycemia, problematic hypoglycemia, nocturnal hypoglycemia. Lifestyle and quality of life should also be taken into consideration. AID can be particularly useful in persons with moderate and high frequency of severe hypoglycemia, and also in people with hypoglycemia unawareness. Furthermore, new small initial study reported an improvement in hypoglycemia unawareness with the use of AID system. And the panel also acknowledged that there are racial and social inequities in technology access and use that need to be tackled in order to reduce disparity in diabetes care. So we have solid evidence exists for the benefit of AID for schoolers, adolescents, adults. All are highly recommended to use AID. But special population with insufficient data are preschooler under the age of 7 and the older above the age of 65, although data are accumulating and some new evidence is coming, but still we don't have enough data to recommend for them. And other population other than type 1 diabetes, population that can benefit from it is pregnancy complicated with type 1 diabetes, not sufficient data to support AID use. In addition, glucose target needed during pregnancy are lower than most commercially available AID. Other target population for AID use could be those with intensive insulin therapy, such as type 2 or cystic fibrosis who use MDI or those after pancreatectomy, but other population has only small feasibility studies. We cannot recommend in this, but the panel also stated that hospitalized people should continue the use of AID in the hospital. So based on the clinical evidence, population that would benefit from AID were graded according to the ADA evidence grading system that you can see here in this slide. I'll move to the next topic that received a lot of interest in the discussions. Should AID be initiated shortly after diagnosis? What is recognized is that tight glycemic control may preserve beta cell function. Furthermore, the use of technology, as you know, CGM or pump early after diagnosis was recently showed to be beneficial, but still we don't have evidence for early initiation of AID. This is lacking. And there are ongoing trials that are noted here in the slide and underway to answer this question, hopefully. So the recommendation was that not enough data yet to conclude early initiation of AID will preserve beta cell function, but likely benefits on long-term glycemic control as well as long-term device acceptance, durable use, and a particular benefit for preschooler age. So in addition to the preparation of people with diabetes, we are focusing always in the people with diabetes, but also the healthcare team should also be equipped with tools for AID to set realistic expectation, as well as this long list of tasks that are mandatory before the team will start using AID or start educating people on AID use. See this very busy slide. I will not go over this, but rather emphasize the importance of proactive addressing user expectation before initiating AID. Acknowledge that there are some burdens, but the benefit outweighed the hassles or the burdens. We also know that we need to provide a comprehensive pre-AID education. AID is not just technical and cannot be separated from the overall management of diabetes. It is actually, as you can see, the tip of the pyramid. The basis is the core management of diabetes. So the panel said that initial device training can be done in the clinic, virtual or both. Training should be tailored to the individual based on current therapy and personal family skills. A special attention should be made to population with long-standing diabetes or what we call suboptimal control for potential transient worsening of retinopathy and potential microvascular complications such as temporary neuropathic pain. The panel didn't say that we won't use AID in this population, but be careful, that's all. Further information on AID initiation you will find in the full article. Here is a proposed pre-AID checklist, and this is recommendation for preparation and initiation of different AIDs that you can see in the full article. So a strategy is also not just for initiation AID, but also for post-AID system start, and we need early follow-up of people that started to use AID, and we also need device setting optimization. And in the upcoming slide, I will give you really a test from the highlights from the clinical advice of the AID use. And the first piece of advice for clinical use was to get rid of the traditional concept of what we call basal insulin and bolus insulin, because as we all know, the way this technology is working is more about insulin delivered by the system and insulin delivered by the user. And this is what is also the way that we should report the data. The panel also wanted to make clear that all systems typically perform best and are safest when they are used according to the manufacturer's specific instruction. Therefore, what people say, working against the system, such as entering factitious carbohydrates or overriding the system recommendation, should not be done, and we should help our patients to trust the system. Another really important topic is that all current available AIDs are hybrid, which means that the user needs to give the pre-meal bolus. Therefore, the carbohydrate ratio should be evaluated regularly by assessing post-meal glucose excursion and aiming to be less than 60 milligrams per deciliter increase compared to pre-meal bolus. We also recommend that some systems need more 10 to 20% more insulin for meal. That means to lower the insulin to carbohydrate ratio. A super important point is that the time in user-initiated bolus needs to be given prior to the carbohydrate intake, because AID will automatically increase algorithm-modulated insulin delivery after initial rise in glucose levels after meal consumption. So a bolus delivered either during or after the carbohydrate consumption can lead to insulin stacking and hypoglycemia. So usually recommend 10 to 20 minutes before the meal to give the meal bolus. In situation where a meal bolus is missed or delayed, consider giving it in the half of the amount in the first hour, or if the user didn't give it at all, just skip the bolus. One of the biggest challenges of diabetes management is exercise management, as physical activity quickly increases insulin sensitivity. We need several actions that should be done to reduce the amount of insulin during the exercise, like set a higher glucose target up to 1 to 2 hours in advance, and keep it post-exercise if post-exercise hypoglycemia is a concern. minimizing activity at times of peak bolus insulin action. We may consider discontinuing the pump. This is okay, but remember to stop the insulin delivery, otherwise the system will calculate this amount of insulin. We also advised, again, consuming carbohydrates before exercise, unless glucose is below 120 or during prolonged exercise activity, and as long as the temporary target is set, as in this time correction bolus will not be given. The panel also wanted to stress the issue of over-treating hypoglycemic events during AID use. The traditional amount of carbohydrate should be reduced as the system already reduced or stopped insulin delivery upfront. So already when low glucose is only predicted and not actually low, as you can see this in this slide, it stopped the insulin an hour and a half before the hypoglycemia already occurred. So in this way, we'll have to reduce glucose fluctuation. And this is one of the most important issue in AID use. Infusion set failure can occur in the same way it happens with insulin pumps. So in case of sustained hyperglycemia, need to measure glucose, ketones, and if glucose level continues to be elevated after correction bolus, give a bolus with a pen or a syringe and change the set, like we're doing in open loop. Recommendation for sick day may differ depending on the system, the individual, and the severity of the illness. The best is to stop AID and move to open loop sick days rule, especially in the presence of ketone. It is also important to adjust from time to time the open loop setting in case of pump failure or CGM cannot read. Also provide the individual with multiple daily injection regimen in case that the pump is broken or there is any technical problem or just someone wants to have a pump holiday. So I would like to end with my talk with this recent meta-analysis by Pease, which demonstrate that AID provides greater time in range than any other current technology. And pay attention, the greatest improvement was seen among the group equivalent to the DCCT intensive care arm, but this time with no increase, AID no increase in hypoglycemia. So the panel has strongly stated the need to make AID systems available for anyone who wants to use it. Patient-related outcomes should also be considered when determining treatment choices. And finally, AID represents an overall cost-effectiveness treatment option. So the recommendation, we strongly recommend that all payers, government and private, should reimburse or cover the AID system along with initial and ongoing AID education and support for the management of people with type 1 diabetes. And I would like to thank the ATTD Congress for organizing, and I would like to thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Oh, that was really revitalizing, Dr. Whiteley. So it was too good. And a new area of exploration that we have explored. So with your permission, Ritu, can I take the next session? Thank you very much.
So please.
Yes. Now it's my honor and a privilege to introduce Professor Dr. Peter Schwartz. Being a specialist in the internal medicine and the medical faculty at Carl Gustav Caras and rehabilitation in the internal medicine, sir is from one of the most beautiful cities of the world. I really rate this. Dresden is one of my dream destinations, if at all I had to revisit it again. Most heavily bombarded city in World War II, but one of the most beautifully rebuilt city I know is Dresden. And sir is going to talk about strategic forum of digitalization in the European Diabetes Forum. Professor Peter is one of the greatly researched fellow. He has been one of the prime authors of around 252 publications, and his H index, we popularly rate people on their research abilities on H index, is whooping 52. And he has received so many accolades and awards, and is one of the papers which got published at Barcelona ESD, DTD conference, was a social media sensation where he was talking about what government should do in preventing diabetes. So over to you, Professor Dr. Peter Schwartz, for your ideas and views on strategic forum digitalization of EUDF. Thank you very much.
Dr. Tivaskar, thank you very much for this very honorable introduction. It is always like this. If you get introduced like this, often you cannot merit these expectations. But it's a great honor for me to talk to you and to your colleagues in India at this Global Congress about recommendations of our work of the European Diabetes Forum. And this is a strategic forum which we have found about self-care technology and digitalization. And to start with, here are my conflicts of interest. I'm cooperating with many organizations, political organizations, payer organizations, industry organizations, but always driven by the passion or the vision to develop tools and strategies who really can help our patients in their daily belongings, in their daily management and self-management of diabetes to improve the outcome. I got already a very nice introduction, but related to this talk, the final line is the most important one. The European Diabetes Forum is a conjunction of all relevant stakeholders in the diabetes sector in Europe. So it's not only scientific, it's not only patient, it's not only industry, or it's not only policymakers, it's all of them together. There are many partners, many organizations included, and there is a PARI organization, so the weight of researchers and physicians and the weight of patient representatives are very similar. So we think that we have developed a platform where we can really, or which we can use to really good address the need of patients with diabetes. And of course, the pandemic in the last year has, or the last 3 years, we could already say now, has influenced our work a lot. But what we have learned in terms of digitalization for diabetes patients, if we would have had digital education programs or digital interventions for therapeutic patient education or digital self-management support programs for our patient, I think our patient would have come through the pandemic much better than they have been done with the current situation. So it was already the first months of the pandemic. We have recognized with all the lockdowns and social distancing and close down of ambulatory care services, that digital support of patients with chronic diseases is a key factor for well outcome. Here you see 540 patients from Facebook, from Dresden, from our town. I'm
sorry to intervene, Dr. Peter. Your screen is not visible. I don't know whether you have started a slide share. The screen is not visible.
I just hear that my screen is not visible. I apologize for this. I thought it is visible, and I will try again. And I hope it is visible. Is it visible now?
Yeah. And now you can run it in a slideshow mode now.
And you see the movement of the slides?
No, not yet. You need to run it in the slideshow mode, I believe.
It is in the slideshow mode on my computer, so I try again. And I apologize for this. Slide I just have mentioned. And what I wanted to highlight here, all the red ones will develop diabetes through their lifetime, but all the green ones will not get diabetes through their lifetime. And the difference between the red one and the green one currently could be that those with the green they are using digital interventions to support themselves for self-management of diabetes. So this is at the end improving their outcome through the diabetes management over the next months, years, and maybe decades to come. And this has basically motivated us to very similar than to the talk we just have heard before about AID systems. This has motivated us to bring all the players in the diabetes sector in Europe together with the goal to develop recommendations for self-care technology and digitalizations for patients with diabetes on a European level. And this is a very critical and interesting period currently, because as I said, after the pandemic, everyone is thinking now about what we can do to improve self-management for our patients. And everyone means not only professional organization, it means also the European Commission. So this means the European government. Each national government is developing licensing strategies, how to license apps for diabetes care, how to license digital therapeutics for chronic care management. And especially in Germany, we have a licensing procedure now. It's done by the same institution, the BfArM called, who is also licensing drugs. So having a digital therapeutic, having an app supporting patients with diabetes has the same power and the same rules, or the same rules are applicable to, then you would license a new drug. Here you see our goals of the EUDF. Bring together all the stakeholders, align priorities and urgency, speak with one voice, and achieve policy results. So this is our goal, to achieve policy results throughout Europe. And our slogan is best practice scale. So we want to look into the European countries and countries internationally. What are best practice examples? And we want to help them to scale them up into other countries. Our vision is to enable healthcare systems who are achieving better and perfect outcomes of patients with diabetes. And our mission is to translate our experience, our results from research, our experience from real-world evidence into a need-based better care towards patients with diabetes. So finally, empower people with diabetes to use all available technology to support self-management through digital technologies and innovative therapies. And now you could say, what is the difference to the previous talk? We are not talking about AID system. We are not talking about a glucometer. We are talking mainly about digital therapeutics. That means apps for the patient, supporting their lifestyle, supporting the self-management, supporting motivational aspects, using strategies of cognitive behavior change therapy to help the patient for better self-management. The European Diabetes Forum has 3 strategic forums. One is, this is in the middle one, is self-care technology and digitalization. And if you look at the names, there are many names common to the previous ATTD core working group regarding the recommendations for AID system we just have here. We had a very tight time plan over the last year to work on our goals with a number of meetings, many discussions, many exchange of documents, and finally developed our recommendation. But what we were discussing? There are a lot of new opportunity for digital health to thrive and digital health to improve outcome for patients with diabetes. It's not only the existence of apps, it's also that the apps enable technology to empower people for better self-management and decision-making. And this is very important. We are not talking about the communication between physician and patient. We are talking about an autark function, and digital therapeutic or an app, and diabetes app can have with the patient. And this is a new class of therapy. It's a new column of treating our patient, maybe even beside hospital-based or ambulatory care system. Not everyone is happy about this, but this is becoming reality, that people are using these apps and they manage their diabetes, some better, some not so good. But there is a big opportunity. And finally, that mHealth and smart health, so mobile health and smart health, can be very useful to help patients exactly in this moment. If they have a question, if they have a problem in their daily lifestyle, and supporting them with diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, and preventive aspect. And what is needed to achieve this? It's not alone to having a better contact to the physician. It's mainly a little bit information, but a lot of motivation, and mainly supporting them to build behavioral skills to cope better with diabetes and to improve self-management. And this is a new conceptualization in behavior change using digital therapeutics. So it's basically what can we do to use the functionality of an app, not only to translate or to copy what we have done in the past, but using the power of digitalization to develop new gateways, new delivery channels, new content, new impulses in the day for the patient with diabetes. And if we jump back 10 years ago, we have developed in a large European initiative core goals for behavior change for people with diabetes. And we summarized this in a review, and you see the quintessence of it now. And the final main points are highlighted in blue here. So it's the number of contacts, the intensity of contact, social support is important, and activating the patient to improve self-management. If you translate this review into technology, it means there are 3 phases important for the patient: motivation, action, and maintenance. And there are certain technologies and therapeutic intervention strategies to be used to help the patient to move from the stage of motivation to action and maintenance. Technologies like motivational interviewing, self-efficacy, importance ruler, change talk, reflective listening. These are all technologies we often have heard about. And some of us are also using it in the daily talking to the patient. If we now go a step ahead and say, okay, we use this technology, we translate it into a digital way, and we use an app from the patient to transfer this to the patient or to communicate with the patient, we can develop a new class of therapeutics for our patient. Our guidelines already say we as physicians, we should be knowledgeable in digital health applications and their strengths and weaknesses. We should support our patient to use these digital tools, and we should use the data deriving from these tools for our daily treatment and care. And in Germany, I like to ask then the auditorium, are we doing this, or do we feel that we are fit for this? Often not. But the power of digitalization, what I would like to say is, it's not a new therapy. It's not a new new content. It's not a new thinking in medical and therapeutic dimension. It's mainly a new delivery channel, and the main aspect is we are in the pocket of our patients, and we never have been so close to our patients. And this is a very powerful opportunity. But if we say we use an app and we only copy what we have done in the past, we will fail. Because being so close to our patient means we have to rethink our strategies. We have to rethink what can we track or monitor and give impulses exactly in the moment the patient in their daily lifestyle where the patient needs this or where this impulse is most efficient. And if we recognize that every one of us is making 1,800 decisions every day, if you talk about disease management, it's about 280 to 350 decisions daily the patient has to do. If we are able to influence maybe 20 or 25 of them, but this every day, then I think we finally succeed to improve self-management of our patient. And we have to rethink, it's not a digital tool supporting the patient. We have to think about the digitalization as a powerful concept of supporting our patient. So mainly it's a support, and the digital tool is only the delivery channel. If you compare digitalization with our oral antidiabetics, here is lifestyle, here is all the drugs we have, and here is a review indicating digital tools until 2010 and then until 2020. And you see as younger digital tools and as more powerful they are in lowering A1C. And again, the question, how can an app lower A1C? The answer is we are in the pocket of our patient, and giving the impulses at the right times influences lifestyle of the patient. And this column we see here is actually this columns we see here. It's the lifestyle change of our patient. And summarizing the evidence in digitalization, you see here examples how a review based on 3,507 studies, how A1C can be lowered by applying good digital interventions, depending on the length, depending on the quality, the individualization, and the characteristics of the patient. So there is a lot of power in this field. But at the end, it's not only medicine. If we try to bring together how our patients are making decisions, we as physicians are out of the game in deciding about the lifestyle of our patient, because if you talk about diabetes and obesity patient, the driver of deciding about the lifestyle is the peer group of the patients. And the goal of deciding about lifestyle is mainly quality of life. So if we have something what should work, we should be able, or we must take the threshold that the patient must see an improvement in quality of life within 2 days. Otherwise, he will skip it. So these are the challenges we have to address. And if we look into digital tools, there are plenty of different ways how we look as healthcare provider, how the user, the patient is looking at, what is the peer group saying, what are preferences, treatment recommendations, and behavioral aspects of the digital tools. And in our working group of the EUDF, we try to bring all this together. But at the end, the main thing I would like to say this again is we are in the pocket of our patient, and this is the most powerful aspect we have, but it's also the highest challenge we have to address. And this was driving us in our work. So we developed recommendations after 1 year working, reviewing all the literature, reviewing all the policy recommendations, the practical and real world experiences. And we divided our recommendation in 3 aspects: how to track targets, how to track data, and how to access care, and what is relevant in this field. And this is named a roadmap for apps in the diabetes sector to promise or the promise of digitalization or digital tools in diabetes. The structure is as it is shown here. This is, I apologize. This was the content of this recommendation. And we highlight special experiences in how to license digital therapeutics. From Germany, what I already have mentioned with the digital health application called DIGA, in Belgium with the mHealth Pyramid, and in France with the ETAPS program. All of them have the goal to license digital therapeutics in the diabetes sector. So the first branch is how to develop a user-centered app. And this is important because if we decide as physicians what our patient needs, we are wrong. If we only ask the patient what they want, we get a good overview, but we may have 40 to 50% of the field. We have to address policymaker, we have to address payer structures, and we have to address the developer of tools. Because today's experience is often a company, a startup is developing an app because they are fascinated about their product, but they don't ask the patient what they want. They don't ask the patient about their need. So addressing how to develop and design and technically specify an app is very important. And at the end, the main thing is asking your patient with diabetes what they want. Do focus group interviews, use user-centered design process to make this app user-friendly and easy to navigate. Address your target clientele of users, but be aware you have to meet a high standard of data safety and data security, and it should be interoperable so that the patient can go with her data by skipping one app to another app and have this data available already in the next app. If we look into objectives, how to develop the apps should focus on empowering people with diabetes by offering support for self-management. This is a new class of digital therapeutics in the diabetes sector, and they should do this in a personalized manner. They should use the data to give personalized and individualized intervention for improving decision-making in a meaningful way. And the data collected should be available for real-world evidence studies. Secondly, how to develop the best practice access and let's say, a digital ecosystem for helping diabetes patients. It means first, identify requirements for access and then addressing reimbursement. So each of the member states in Europe should develop a certification process for digital therapeutics in their healthcare system. Patients with diabetes should be consulted in the process, and prompts. So developing real-world evidence studies by using patient-reported outcome or patient-reported outcome measurement criteria is important. Reimbursement should be available for using digital therapeutics if they are efficient, if they have proven safety, if they have shown that they have an impact in lowering A1C, improving quality of life, and improving self-management for our patient. Finally, the third branch is how to develop training opportunities to become more familiar with apps. Of course, maybe you or many of colleagues of you know about all the diabetes apps available in the App Store, know about all licensed apps in the sector. In Germany, it is not like this. So about 80% of the colleagues in Germany does not know this. So this is a key important that these colleagues are trained how to use it, what is the pros and cons of each of the app, because the current practice in Germany that this app is prescribed by the physician for the patient, but then it's also reimbursed by the healthcare system. So this training should be established and should focus on benefits, strengths, and weaknesses of each of the apps. But then to encourage the uptake and integration of apps into the healthcare pathways, this is something what our diabetes organization is requiring, that there's not a new pathway of treating diabetes patient upcoming, that we include digital therapeutics into our pathways. This finally means also into our guidelines in the future. So to decide what is the right moment for the right patient with the right app to improve their outcome. And then finally, develop a kind of digital ecosystem for diabetes so that hospital-based ambulatory care and digital care go hand in hand to finally improve the outcome of our patient. And we are sure that apps can play a very important role as part of telemedicine, as part of mHealth or smart health, to complement an efficient, patient-centric, need-based, individualized intervention for our diabetes patient. If you want to get more information about the outcome, about the documents, about how to distribute this, how the development is ongoing, you can follow on Twitter, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and through the internet. And I'm very sure that our patients with diabetes deserve a better tomorrow. And I'm very sure that digitalization can help to break down barriers, that digitalization can help us to promote a better outcome for our patient with diabetes. And if we work together globally with our intuition, our experience, and our pros and cons in using digital tools, I'm very sure that we finally will walk away from diabetes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Oh, that was just awesome. Friends, probably we have some time for quick chat with these experts, and we heard from Dr. Pratik on precision diabetes. So he started with probably the pharmacogenomics aspect of the story, and then Dr. Nimri told us how an artificial intelligence can be incorporated to close the loop, and then Dr. Peter has guided us. Probably, there are so many apps, but now I would like to ask Dr. Peter, and that there are so many apps that you have shown.
Yeah.
How do you handpick them specifically for the people?
This is a very good question. I gave the example in Germany. We have about 1,200 diabetes apps in the App Store, and you cannot have an overview about. But the institution who is licensing drugs, they license apps. So the producer has to apply with his app to get a license for treatment of diabetes. And the procedures are exactly the same like for drugs. So you have to provide study data. You have to do studies. You have to, they test your app regarding patient safety. And currently we have 5 apps listed for diabetes care. And knowing about 5 apps, I think this is possible for every one of us, and even if it's 10 or 20 in the future. So it does not mean the app from the App Store. It means an exclusively licensed app approved for treatment of diabetes patients.
So it is just like app with prescription.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And now I come to Dr. Pratik. Dr. Pratik, you spoke about the various different ways and interventions that you are looking forward, especially when you are identifying various clusters of type 2 diabetes. There's a couple of Danish data which have shown around 5 to 6 clusters. India, we had 4 prominent clusters where apart from the severe insulin resistant diabetes, in India we also had the one more very interesting is the combined insulin resistance and deficiency diabetes, which is very, very prominent in India. I want to know about, now you have seen these drugs developed as far as the precision medicine is concerned. Do you really feel that there are going to be some tools which are coming into the picture which can quickly tell me that yes, this drug is likely to be very helpful for my patient, and this, let's say suppose sulfonylurea I am prescribing, it's likely to cause severe hypoglycemia with the minimum dose, or the sulfonylurea may not be effective in this patient? Are we going to look at the technology like that? You need to unmute yourself, Doctor.
Yeah, sorry, I've got it. So I think the potential is there, isn't it? And for various drugs, like we see like a 0.5% difference in the efficacy of DPP-4 or a doubling of the risk of severe hypoglycemia with SUs. So in smaller cohorts, the knowledge is there, but actually for practical use, it will only become relevant if all of your patients have a genetic screen done, and you have that genetic screen done and it comes through. So I think there's quite a long way. And like any new area of medicine, there's at the moment, as I said, on that roadmap of precision medicine, we are at the information gathering stage, and then we are moving into some areas and moved into the testing phase where you can test that in smaller cohorts. Is this the right way to go? As drugs get more expensive and as widespread data registries become more widespread. So those are all the enabling factors. Like in Germany, you have the DPV German registry. The Danish and Swedish registries are pretty comprehensive. In UK, we have the National Diabetes Registry. That still doesn't have genomic data.
Yes.
Right. And someone made the comment about data security in the previous section. And actually, how many people will say, I would want my genetic data to be held by the healthcare system to make the best drug choice for me. There's also risks to that story as well. Does that mean I won't get health insurance because I've got a gene that makes me more likely to get dementia when I'm 60? Will that stop me getting employed? So there's lots of things to happen before that image becomes a reality, but it's AI data, big databases, make these things possible. And it's inevitable it will happen. It's just how you sort out those barriers along the way. That's my view.
Yeah. In fact, that is what we exactly are looking at. Really, the implantable chips, the external chips, which can really just, you can pee or poo on them and just find out, these are the drugs which are likely to be helpful. Finally, I'll come to Dr. Nimri and would like to ask her. Dr. Nimri, you spoke beautifully about AI and use of insulin pumps and how to probably try to close the entire loop. How quickly you are anticipating that to be useful in the clinical practice?
Well, I think that most of the closed loop systems that we already have now are really time by time are getting into the clinical use. I don't know what is the situation in India. I would like to know, but I know in Israel we're getting this closed loop system, although we worked a lot to achieve it and to develop it. So this is another issue that needs to be resolved in the issue of reimbursement. We talked about it, and I think we need to push hard that people that want to use it will have the ability to use it, and those that do not want or cannot use pump or sensor will have the opportunity to have other things that will help them to manage their diabetes, like decision support systems. We have the DreamEd Advisor, what we call the EndoDigital, which is FDA approved, And we help people that do not have the ability to have a pump or a sensor with MDI, which are the most people in the world, to have some kind of a closed loop and help in decision making and in insulin management and behavioral management as well.
Yeah, in India, let me tell you, ma'am, that it's already been introduced and been used, so, and we all know that how tech savvy Israel as a country is, and Indians are so much dependent as far as their weaponries and intelligence is concerned on Israel. Anyway, any questions, Dr. Ritu, from your side, or we can hand it back to the organizers?
No, I think, Dr. Tivaskar, thank you so much. But I have just few lines to say before we hand it over to the organizers that, first of all, brilliant talks by all the three key speakers. Dr. Pratik, have been following you for ages now, talking about the CGM and how, the entire cloud networking is going to change, the way diabetes is managed. And I must say, though, of course, I'm late in the day, that, this entire conference just focuses on technology, and really privileged to have these kind of topics, because India definitely is very fast rising in terms of adopting all these newer technologies. So while, of course, denial is something that is there in all the countries, but it is really nice to have you key speakers talking about automated closed loop systems, and also about, the EUD, the European entire structure, putting it together. So I guess really thank you so very much, DTechCon, the organizing committee, and all key speakers for this wonderful lucid presentation. Thank you so very much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Ritu. I would just like to come in and mention here one very important aspect. We are very thankful and grateful to Dr. Pratik Chaudhary. I would like to mention that this particular meeting is also happening in alliance with Diabetes Technology Network UK. So we are official partner of the DTN UK, and Dr. Pratik Chaudhary is chairing the Diabetes Technology Network UK. So thank you, Dr. Pratik, for supporting this DTech conference. And I have just one more information to share with you, that we have more than 2,000 delegates who have joined us from outside India. So this is the scope of the meeting, that this is a global meeting actually which is happening, and we have more than 2,000 delegates from the different parts of the world. So this is simply amazing, and all the talks were really great. Dr. Peter, Dr. Revital, we learned a lot from you. So thanks on behalf of the organizing committee, all of us from the India. Thank you very much.
And let's hope to.
It was a great honor to be here.
Yeah, we hope to see you again physically next year for the same conference.
Absolutely.
Oh,
A great honor.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye. Ciao.
Bye.